Transcript started. Okay, looks like we're recording, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off. So welcome everybody. Again, the title of the presentation is Practical Use Cases for Composite Models. I'm going to try to be pretty demo heavy. We're going to go through a couple slides and then get right into it. And when I'm talking composite models here, I'm talking about the newer feature of the composite models against Power BI datasets and analysis services. I'm going to skip over slide 2. For those that don't know me, Kevin Arnold, I'm a co-leader on this user group. That's my LinkedIn information, Kev Arnold. Or you can reach me out on Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. So at Kev Arnold there. I am an MVP. If you heard our conversation earlier, I was recently awarded that in May of this year. So I'm pretty happy about that. And you do find me on the social media, like especially Twitter. This is what my little avatar looks like instead of showing my regular face all the time. Okay, our agenda for today is we're first going to talk about the Power BI connection types that exist out there today and getting over to a DirectQuery connection type to a Power BI data set and analysis services. So we'll talk about what that is. It is a preview feature, so you're going to have to enable that. We'll touch on that real quick. And then we'll get into the demos. Depending on the time we have, I could do anywhere up to 6 different demos. I'd be shocked if we get through all of them. I have some useful links that I'll share with you at the end. Questions and discussion, feel free to hold off to the end, or like I said, just come off mute or ping me in chat and be happy to discuss it at that time. All right, so let's review what the Power BI connection types are, right? The one on top, import, is the one we probably use the most. It's actually the one to be recommended to be used the most because that brings all of your Power BI data into the Vertipack engine, compresses it, and it's up in memory, so it's extremely fast, and it is the power behind Power BI. Then there is DirectQuery, and you see a lot of people utilize DirectQuery when they want things to be processed back to the source system and almost, how quickly that source system is updated. They want their reports to be updated. There are limitations within DirectQuery. There are caveats with it. So you want to make sure you understand some of that. A lot of those apply as we do DirectQuery against Power BI datasets as well. There are things like if you do some processing and it hits 1 million rows that it's trying to process, you will end up getting an error. So there's just that 1 million row error. And that's one of the common ones that we see when you're trying to do things with composite models back to Power BI datasets. And I am going to abbreviate it to Power BI datasets. A lot of this applies to, same thing applies if you're using Azure Analysis Services or other analysis services that supports the composite model. So what's also called mixed, what you'll see sometimes, or just DirectQuery, that is the composite model. So rather than saying those big long feature names all the time, like DirectQuery to Power BI datasets and analysis services, I've given this a lot, so now I have it actually down. A lot of us just tend to abbreviate it to composite model. So that's how you hear this term. And then a live connection. And a live connection is what is used when you're producing a thin report. And this is one of the best practices is separate your data set from your report and have your report do a live connection back to that published data set. And then this way you have one data set and multiple reports hitting it from there. So that's what we do in all of the clients that we implement. Even if I only have one report hanging off of that data set, my plan is for that data set to get used more in the future. Even that one report, I separate off so that I'm always publishing them independently. Okay, so what is DirectQuery for Power BI datasets and analysis services? And what this slide covers is what what the goals and its non-goals are. And I actually got this right from the product manager from Microsoft that is responsible for this feature. Him and I talked after I've given this presentation a couple times, and when I was preparing for it up in Chicago, we had a conversation. Actually, one of the links I have is they have a training webinar out there, and that's where I took this slide from, and then got his permission to continue using it from there. Okay, so this gives you the ability to connect to Power BI datasets. Oh, and he's got, oh, that's interesting. I think he wrote this, Azure Analysis Services. But really, it's expanded out to more instances of analysis services. Azure Analysis Services, you could do a composite model to. And now if you're doing SQL Server, which the newest version of SQL Server, 2022, analysis services on that on-prem set of bits will support composite models as well. So let's get through what some of the goals and non-goals are, because that's where it really gets into what we're looking at. Because there are three primary goals: extend, enrich, and overview. And you could read what those have there. And I'm going to try to show an example of each one of those. Right, so you want to be able to extend your model more than what you could just do if you have a thin report. If you have a thin report, that live connection from a report to a Power BI data set, you could build measures within that model, but there's not much else that you could build in there. So there are some things you could do to extend it just a little bit more. Actually, this is the enrich part. To enrich it just a little bit more to take advantage of some of the additional reporting features. Extend, I'm going to show an example of extending, of adding other types of data to the model. And then overview, where you have disjoint data sets that you want to bring both of them in, or multiples of them, into your model and use it to produce some type of overview, or a report off of multiple actual data sets. The non-goals are what's really kind of important here. And what you see is both of these talk about large large systems or large models, right? And what a lot of people were trying to do when this first came out is they saw this as the holy grail of being able to take these enterprise data sets, these large data sets, and join them together. And then that's where they started running into some of the issues that you would normally run into with DirectQuery. Again, that million row limit that we were talking about, or also just performance overall. And then what has to run within what's called the wholesale model versus the retail model. In other words, what runs on your local model and what runs back on your hosted model. And I'm not going to get a lot into that today, but some of the links that I'll share off of the QR code and the link on the very last slide. The SQL BI guys write a lot about this. And a couple other people, I think Paul Turley has written a little bit about this. But if you extend into these non-goals, just be careful. Actually, just before this session started on LinkedIn, I was reading from a post on LinkedIn from a guy that said he was trying to use a composite model to where he brings in all of his shared dimension and then has his facts in different data sets and is bringing them all in. And he was talking about it not performing very well. And that's what you're going to start running into. So I would recommend starting off small and growing into it if you're going to use composite models. They have some really great use cases, and hopefully the ones that I show you here will give you good ideas with it. Okay, so right now it is a preview feature. It has been preview for, I think, years now. What did it says? It's been in preview since December of 2020. So, almost 2 years that it's been in preview. Some of the reasons behind that is there's some technical challenges that they're trying to correct with it. When the feature first came out, in order to utilize the other data sets, besides having read on the data sets that you're connecting to in your chain, you had to have build permissions on it. And I think now in Premium, you don't have to have the build permissions, but in Pro you do. So that's something that they're working on fixing, and I think there's a couple other challenges that they're going to try to come around. My chat went away. Hey, Fernando. Uh, so they're going to try to come around before they actually take it out of preview. So if you go to your options in your Power BI desktop and turn on DirectQuery for Power BI datasets and analysis services, then that enables the feature for you. All right, finally getting to the point of what I like. Let's get to the examples. And I'm going to try, I have, as you see, I have 5 of them listed out here, but I have 6 in my file, right? So under enrich, we're going to try to cover that part. We're going to talk about changing out to enable you without having the actual data set to do field parameters. I'm going to show you how to do perspectives for personalized visuals, and then reduce visible tables inside Excel, add budget data, and then the last part, if we make it to this, the multiple models in a data set. And then I have a little trick that I use when, instead of connecting dimensions together, setting slicers a certain way. Okay. So bringing up my Power BI desktop, and you guys let me know. Let me zoom in on the desktop a little bit. And everything is branded with Data Insight Summit because that's the last place that I gave this. Okay, so what I wanted to show, let me start up Zoom it too a little bit because that's going to help. And you just start. Okay. So on this Power BI desktop, if I zoom in, you can see down here that it's telling me I'm connected live to a Power BI data set called Contoso in Contoso data. So that's up on the service. And it has a blue link here to say make changes to this model. So if I wanted to design out a report and I had this visual on here and I wanted to start making this visual to be a little bit more customizable with field parameters, and I come over into, see if I can remember where that is now. Let's see, pages.
Is it under modeling?
Yes, it is. Thank you. So if I come in under modeling and I try to click on new parameter, you can see that's not an option that's available to me. That's because since it's a live connection, I don't have a local model. And field parameters require you to have a local model. So I'm simply going to connect on make changes to this model. And that's what is going to change my connection type from connected live, i.e. a thin report, to the direct query. So it gives you this little warning message. And it says a direct query connection is required. And it tells you some of the things that you could do and just say, do you want to add the local model? So I'm going to click the yellow button and you'll see this will change. And it comes up with a selection that you could choose which tables you want to bring in from that remote model. And you could check or uncheck if that model changes later on and you do a refresh, that you get the tables that are added later. We're going to come back and look at this a little bit more detail later on, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say submit and bring in all of the tables. So you can see it does a little bit more work behind the scenes. And now back to my zoom in, you'll notice that my storage mode changed and it actually tells me direct query. And Oh, well, this doesn't, you'll notice later on, we'll see when the other tab, the tables, or I can't remember what they call that, but the one that looks like a matrix here, that still doesn't show up because all of these tables are remote for me. I can go look inside the model, just like before, even with a live connection, I was able to see this. Maybe I should have brought that up. When we start the next one, I'll show it. But now you see what this has is color coding to tell you that what model, or that it is coming from a remote model, and all of the ones that have a blue bar are coming from the same place. And if I hover over it like I have been, it tells me that what the name is, that the storage is a DirectQuery, where it's coming from, what the server name and the database name is. So it gives you that information here. And you could, yeah, the data view, thank you, is what that other tab was called. But we will see that when we actually add a table to this later on. Okay, so let's get back to what our objective is. We want to add a new field parameter and modify this visualization to utilize that field parameter. So now you see, because I have a local model, this all of a sudden changed to be enabled. And I could say new parameter field. I'll just call it new parm. And I'm going to add, I think it's customer type that works well. I should have taken better notes. And we're going to do product, and let's do brand. And say, do you want to, I'm going to tell it to add a slicer to this page. Hopefully you all know what field parameters are. I wasn't going to plan on going real deep into those, but if there's questions on it, please let me know. It's a way to help you dynamically change what you want to see things by, right? So this right now is just seen by customer type. So now if I wanted to change what I have on my axis, I could use my field parameter to come in here. I'm going to remove customer type. And you see I have my parameter over here. And now when I have customer type selected, it looks just like I had before. And by default, it's selected the very first one. But I could change this to go by brand and modify what my visualization looks like now. So that's one of the very first setups. So pretty simple, right? But again, I still don't have to have the model. I don't have to copy everything that was in that remote model into this model just to add one small feature onto my report. And it allows me to take advantage of an enterprise model or a shareable model, but still add other features to it. Okay, so I'm going to come back now and I'm going to publish this up to the service because it says so on my notes, because it sets up my demo too.
Did you want to show us the model view that has the new table, or
Oh yeah, it showed it now. You're right. Yeah,
or the data view and the model view?
Yes. The model view was there before. Let me publish to this workspace.
Based on what you said, I expect to see a square without a blue hat.
Yes. Let me do that. Thanks. So yeah, if we come into the data view, we could see it's only going to show us this table, right? Because when you add a field parameter, it produces a table within the model, or somewhat of a table, right? If I click on something like product, it's going to tell me this is a DirectQuery and cannot be shown. And then if we go to this, like you suspected, right? New parameter shows up, but it shows it to be in import mode, and yes, it doesn't have the blue hat on it because it's part of this local model, not of this model.
Can I just interject? I've done a few of these and I never noticed the colors, and so that helps a lot.
It helps a whole lot, and I think there's an option. Let me look at where.
So Carlos has a good question, by the way.
Okay, yeah, let me,
Yeah.
so here, the other thing you could do is when you're on the main canvas, show the database in the header when applicable. So I could change that to yes, and it could show me here where it's coming from. Although, because the connection string is so long, to me, that's not very useful. All right, so let's read Carlos's question. If you had to find parameters in the original data set prior to publishing to the service, would the parameters be available in the live connection to the data set? And the answer is no. The parameters are only available to the report connected to that data set. So even if you happen to build, if you built out a Power BI model and you built field parameters in there because you had a report connected to it, when you go live connection to that, you cannot use those same field parameters. The way that it works, it has to be in the local model. So that's it. This is the only, right? The only way to be able to reuse a data set plus add things like field parameters, or if you wanted to, go back to here, you could do field parameters or the numeric range parameters, right? The what if parameters is what they were called. Good questions. Wait to see what Carlos finishes typing. Oh, maybe he didn't really have anything. Sure.
He said
If we have
thanks.
yeah, and if we have a chance, maybe we'll try to take a look at that, right? Because actually, let's just do that real quick. So if I do file, I'm going to do a new report. Because I want to verify my answers. So we'll take a little bit of a distraction here. So now if I say, how come it's not? Oh, it's under Data Hub, this new interface. So if I connect to a Power BI data set and see data one, demo one was what I just published, right? So I could do a thin report against that. And I see this, but I don't, maybe I ended up saying this incorrectly. I didn't think this was going to be usable. Let's go ahead and do this. Put the sales on here.
Why don't you just use that copy page feature from the other report? Oh, wait, that's not a feature.
Okay, so this is getting interesting. Maybe it's going to make a liar out of me. Or not liar, just I'm going to learn something new with everybody else. That does
Holy
work.
snap.
I
Holy
didn't
snap.
think that worked. I thought it had to be within the same data set. So Carlos,
Thank God Carlos is here. I'm just,
yeah, I
no,
learned
that's
something
terrific.
new. Now I'm gonna have to kind of test out a few other things. So, because I didn't think that would be allowed, but that's great. Yeah, very interesting. I'll have to ask if that was something new. Yeah, so he thought maybe when he did some testing, it was a fluke, but it's not a fluke. I thought there was definitely a restriction because this has some it looks like a table, it's presented like a table, but it's not an actual table. So okay, great. An enhancement. So good. All right, I'm gonna get rid of that. And we'll try to move on to demo 2 now, if my spinny ever comes back. Okay. So in demo 2, what we're going to kind of talk about is personalized visuals. And so this is why I wanted to publish that report. Because if we come up to the service now and we take a look at what's in demo, what I call demo 1, and we go to the page it's called demo 2, you can see that I have this page set up that I could personalize this visual. But if I take a look at how the personalized visual works, I'm going to see every column, every table, every column that's inside my model, and they're good, and my user will be able to choose from that. And so people could get confused by that, or it could be that's not what you really want them to be able to do. So you want to kind of see if you could restrict this down. Well, the way you do that with personalized visuals is what's called a a perspective within your Power BI model. And again, when you have, you have to have some type of model associated with the report in order to do that. So if you had perspectives um, in your other enterprise, your shareable model, then you would see those. But in this case, I don't have that because that gets customized in, let's look here. And you can see under personalized visuals, report render perspective. This is where you would customize it. All I have is default and model is the whole thing. So what I want to do is add a new um, perspective. And to do that, I have to use a tool that is outside of Power BI. So I'm going to utilize Tabular Editor. I'm going to happen to use Tabular Editor 3. You could do this with Tabular Editor 2 as well. I just like Tabular Editor 3. Although the video I produced the other day, I did it in Tabular Editor 2 just to make sure that everything works. Of course, that opens on my other screen. Get that done. And so if I come here, this is what Tabular Editor 3 looks like. And what I could do is come here and click on perspectives and say create new perspective. Less is more. I think I could put spaces in there. And then this has this concept called macros where I could run a perspective editor. This is what got me last time. It opened on a weird page and I couldn't see it. So I'm going to say modify an existing, less is more, go. And this allows me to just come in here and I'm going to, off of customer, I'm going to select customer type. And off of product, like we did before, I'm going to choose brand. I'm going to choose color as well, just to have something more. Tell it to modify the perspective, and it went ahead and did that. Close that out. And now when I hit save, and that saves that back to the model. And close that back out. And then in theory, what we should be able to do is come here and just see it show up, but it doesn't. So what I found that I have to do is I actually have to close and say, I have to save first. I'm going to close, then I'm going to reopen. Hopefully that's going to come up in my drop-down box. Come on. And once we reopen, when we come back to visualize or to customize this page, we'll see that we have our less is more perspective. And so that's going to now reduce what we're able to see. So let me save this and then I'm going to publish. And actually I wanted to do save as, and I'm going to call it demo 2 so that we have a different report out there in case we want to go back to demo 1. Data Insight Summit is what we were using because we're acting like we're in Chicago, where it's colder than down here in Dallas. And now back to our browser. Let's go back to our, we see we got demo 2. And if I open that up and we hit the personalize this visual, goes to another side, but that's okay. So you see now I have a whole lot less selections than before. So this again, and why I think it's a practical use case is you're not waiting on somebody else to have to modify the model. And a lot of the clients that we work on, we're in bigger teams, and it's not one person doing everything. Some people are responsible for the models, some people are responsible for the reports, especially if you have a team that is globally dispersed, like what we have. The people writing the reports may not be able to modify the models, and I want them to keep making progress on the reports. So we actually utilize the composite models for them to start doing these type of things, and then we make a decision whether we push it back or not.
So Kevin,
to the enterprise model. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think
I need a drink anyways.
Okay, I think now I understand. So before you created the local model, you couldn't have connected Tabular Editor to it. So that was because we did that for demo 1, we had that in place and we were able to go ahead and define this perspective.
Yes.
But the other question I had is, so the consumers of the report in the service, they only need read permission, and if they can personalize if you've allowed personalized, if you've enabled that feature?
They would only need read permission and they would be able to do that, but there is a setting on the data set. Glad you asked this. I should know this off the top of my head. There is a setting, and I can't remember if it's something we could do here. There is a do not allow. It's not going to be under that. Do not allow the do not allow a composite to be built from it. Let's see if it's in.
Is
here
that under
somewhere.
sharing when you do the? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm gonna hunt and peck real quick, but there is a way. Maybe there's 2 or 3 people typing. Maybe others know how to do it real quick.
Have your report writers gotten good use out of this personalization? Like this feature?
Permissions on the report. Yes. Oh, yeah. That's how I first learned about it, is because we started telling people to use it.
Do you mean, Ibrahim, do you mean in the service? Do you mean permissions in the service on the report?
Yes, that's great. Like when
There it
we
is.
publish it on the service.
This is the setting I was looking for. Publish data set settings. Is you got to do this direct query connections to this data set, discourage direct query connections. And it's interesting that it's called discourage rather than prevent. So I don't know, right? I have to go out to the README.
Somebody had fun with that one.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't signed up for Ignite, sign up for Ignite. A lot of good stuff. They're currently telling us all the good stuff coming. I've been in meetings after meetings about it, but yeah, by default, when you publish a data set, you could set up a direct query to it. And then this tells you everything that's going to be done for it. This is something I ought to add to my links. So yeah, you can set that to stop it, or hopefully stop it.
Discourage it. Kevin, Carlos asked a question about personalization in general. Do you see what he asked in the chat? Just comparing that to
yeah. So So a good summary that lists differences using personalization versus simply saving a copy of the report to your workspace and making changes. So if somebody does not have build permissions against the data set, they're not going to be able to create a new report or customize a report against that data set. So even if they copy the report into their, their My Workspace or another workspace, they shouldn't be able to make the changes unless they have build permission on the data set. So that would be a reason why. A lot of times you discourage build on a data set unless you're explicitly writing that data set for self-service. Because in my opinion, and we can get into this at another time, I have a ton of data sets that I publish out for self-service, and I have a total different maintenance philosophy for them because you don't know all the reports, or not that you don't always know, but it's hard to know all the reports built against it. And we have a do not break policy. So anything that we're going to change, we have to go through a lot more change control with people using those data sets to find out if they're using something, say in an Excel file that we're not able to trace back to. Before we actually we were talking about that today. There's an indicator we have on a date table that says this is part of the trailing 12 months. And it's the 12 months based, that doesn't include the current month because it's financial and it's not closed. And so it's just an indicator to say it's the 12 months from the last month closed back 12. And somebody asked about changing that to include the current month. And we said, well, we got to hold off until we find out if everybody using it agrees with that definition, or we'd have to put in a new indicator that would be used for that other scenario. And so you have a different policy or a different thought process in maintenance when doing that, if people don't have when people have build access to it. Hopefully that rambling answers your question, Carlos.
Well, Carlos is typing something, but I gotta ask, I thought once you go mixed, you make that local model. I thought I had to get that, like people with read permission, and then I had reports connected to it. People with read permission it didn't work. It broke. I had to give them build permission once I created the mixed model. And there was
that in a pro service, that is correct. That's what
okay.
I thought I mentioned that earlier. When
I'm
you're
sorry,
doing a composite model right now and you publish it to pro, everything up the chain, the end users have to have build permission to everything in the chain. Okay. If they don't, if you're on premium, that's no longer the case.
And when will they fix that in Pro? Do you know?
They're working on it, but I don't have a date on when that's going to happen.
Right. I do remember you said that. I'm sorry.
And Carlos, I do know that you were talking specifically about changing the report, not the data set, but they will not be able to edit the report if they do not have build permissions on the data set. And if we have time towards the end, we could try that again, but that's my understanding. So I could log in with a different account on this tenant, and we could try exactly what you're looking at. But let's move on, and I got about 10 to 7. Let's try to get through at least one more demo if that's good with everybody. We're learning extra things, and this is great. So let's try this part that we're talking about, reducing the tables so that for columns in order to do when you're browsing in Excel. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. We'll see you later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start with this model because I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. If you remember when we first created the local model, we were able to have a dialog came up for us to select what tables we want. So we could come back in here and we could do data source settings. That's not where I need it to be. Do transform data. Now I got to remember how I get back to this. I should have done it the way I always did it. Sorry. Get out of that. Oh, I know what it is. We would come up here if we wanted to change something that's currently already connected. We do change source, and then we're still going to connect back to the original model that we had, which was the Contoso within my Contoso data workspace. And now it's going to bring that dialog back up for us. And now what we're going to do is we're going to uncheck add tables later, or include tables that are added later. And I'm going to unselect store and promotion. And I'm going to go ahead and say submit. So now what you'll notice is those have been removed from our fields list over here. Let me save this as demo 3. And then I'll show you what we see up as, all right, Daryl, we'll see you. Let me publish this. And I'll show a little bit more of what I think the use case is. Once we have both published and up on the service. Okay, so if we go back to the service, and I'm actually going to go to Office. And I'm going to go into Excel within Office and do a new blank worksheet. And if you don't know, what you could do is come into Office Online, have a pivot table, and you could create a pivot table from Power BI. And then that's going to bring up over here this list of data sources that you have access to. And of course, I keep typing everything as demo, right? So the last one that we just published was demo 3. Let me start with that, and I'm going to insert that as a new pivot table. And you can see, I only see the items, right, that I had, right, that I selected from the actual model. If I go into, I'm going to do another worksheet, going to insert from Power BI. And if we do demo 1, all right, you don't like me today, huh? If you remember on demo 1 and demo 2, we had all of the tables, right? So we page down here and we see promotion and we see store. So if you have a large model, this is the use case, is if you have a large model, I have some models that have 80 some odd tables in them. And what we find is some of the users are a little slow, or they don't need all of those tables. So well, I cut that off at a weird spot. They're not slow. They're just, it takes them time to learn everything that they need. And if you could direct them a little bit more, then I think they could get more productive sooner. We tried using things like perspectives and stuff, but that just doesn't work too well. But if we produce these composite models, we have everything going back to the main model that we're maintaining, and changes, the right type of changes that get promoted through these composite models, right? If we happen to have to fix a bug in a measure or something like that, that would actually get fixed. But we could thin down or scale back the number of tables that they see so that they could be more productive. It's not security. It would allow them, if they connect it to the actual model, to see everything, but you are going to scale it back quite a bit, right? And if we bunch back to here, we could see, we have less tables than if we do, let me collapse all of these, right, in this actual model. So I think that's a good use case to get people doing your analyze in Excel. So yeah, in demo 2, well, we're seeing that out of demo 3, and it's the same as demo 2, but let me try that. And yeah, you still see new parm in both of them. 'Cause it's the same type of file, right? We're not connecting this we just kind of connected all the way. We did the same thing as demo 2, Jack. So now obviously you can come back and you could hide this, right, inside your model. And then if I publish this, so this is still 3. See if we can figure out the right tab in Excel. And I think when I do a refresh, that table should no longer be visible. So this one was 2. And I think this one was actually, yeah, demo 3 here. So we're going to go to data, refresh selected connection, and you can see it went away because I hit it. I changed it to hidden in the actual model. So that's another option that you could do is inside your composite model. And I'm glad you brought that question up, Jack, right? Is you could unselect items that you don't want to bring in, or you could hide more things, you know, and then unhide them later if you wanted to publish it that way. Which again, I think it's just a very good use case for getting users up to speed on what large models look like. All right, I have 3 minutes to 7. Do we want to try to get one more demo in? Let's see what demo 4 actually is. Oh yeah, let's get this demo in and then we'll take a good checkpoint. Shoot, shoot. I think Fernando, you're saying shoot, like go for it type of thing. All right, so in this one, what we're going to do is, do I have, yeah, I think I have the right things in it, is we're going to extend the model by adding monthly budget data to it. So let me go back and show you what this looks like. Spam caller. Okay, so I have a spreadsheet and it's also on my local drive that I have a small amount of budget data to match back up to the Contoso data. So I have things that are, I have it just as the first of the month, and I have a couple categories that I'm assigning. So for audio in the year of 2008, I'm assigning these budget amounts. For cell phones, I have a set of budget amounts, and for computers. So I'm going to bring that into into my Power BI workbook here. And actually, I think what I want to do is, I hope this is going to work. Because of the, now I got to figure out where I got to navigate to. Let me find that path real quick. Where I ended up storing that data. It was always in my I recently used, and when I just did all the stuff for the 25 days of DAX, I lost it out of my recently used. Okay, found it. All right. So I'm going to say I'm going to get data just from an Excel workbook. I'm going to navigate over to where it's at. My Contoso model or Contoso spreadsheet. And I had that defined within a table. I'm going to come in, I'm going to do transform data. So remember, what we're trying to connect this to is by a date and by a category. So I'm actually going to mark this one as not to enable load. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. And I'm going to call this my budget fact, because it's going to be my fact table. And in that one, I'm going to keep all the columns in there. Actually, I should reference instead of duplicate. So I'm going to reference that one again. And in this case, I just only want to keep the dates that I'm using here. So I'm going to call this. This is one I should have practiced because I'm trying to remember how I did all this. So I'm going to remove other columns. I'm going to remove duplicates to just get the unique dates. And I'm going to call this budget date as well. And you'll see why I'm going to do all this in just a little bit. Reference that again. And I'm going to keep category this time. So I have my unique categories. I thought I typed that, but I guess I didn't.
I thought you did.
Okay. So we're going to say close and apply. And when I do this, when I add another source, I get a warning message that tells me that there's a potential security risk. And the reason that I get this is because now, whenever you're combining two data sources together, there's a potential it's going to send data from one data source to another. So they're calling that a potential security risk, and that you trust the owners and the admins with the data. So you could always click on learn more to understand more about that, but just know that that's a possibility. So that's going to only two of my three tables. Hang on, I know what I did. Because I did a duplicate on this. I need to tell it to enable load. I should have done the reference and it would have worked just fine. Okay, so now I have my three tables. And now this is where the fun starts. I'm gonna, hopefully you guys will still be able to see this. I'm gonna reduce it down a little bit because I'm gonna do some data modeling, and you could see here, it already added one of my relationships, but not the other. So because of the name, so I'm gonna put budget date to here. And then what I also want to do is combine, I want to connect these within the model. Sorry. So I'm going to relate category to category on product. And so it's asking me what type I want, and it's going to be one-to-many, single filtering. And I'm going to say, okay. And you could see, let me zoom in a little bit here. Let me move this over. You can see it's got a different representation for this visual. You see those brackets, right? Because what it's telling you is it couldn't verify this relationship. Some people have been calling this a weak relationship. I can't remember what the exact word is now. Oh, limited relationship is the words Microsoft used for it. So it's a limited relationship between these two tables. Because it couldn't verify it, it doesn't exactly know that the data matches or not. And then I'm going to do that same thing for budget date. And hang on, I got to look at my instructions. my instructions, I didn't tell myself what to tie this to. I'm pretty sure that I need to tie this to calendar year month. Calendar year month is actually a date, and it's just formatted to just be the year and the month. So let's make sure I got that one. If I come here on my budget date itself, I give it a custom format. And I want it to be it's got to be lowercase, doesn't it? Okay, so you said gave me that little example, so now it's showing correctly. Ah, it moved my directories. Okay, and if I've done this all right, what I'll be able to do, oh, I need to create my measure. This is pretty new, I think. Out of budget fact, I should now be able to maybe I didn't update that correctly. I thought they were bringing this. Maybe I thought wrong. I thought I was going to be able to create measures from there.
From the
Never
model
mind.
view?
Yeah, but I must be.
That was on Patrick's wish list, I think.
Maybe that's what I was thinking. Maybe it was somebody's wish list. But anyway, so I want to create a new measure. And I'm just going to call it budget amount. And I'm still going to make it a currency. Okay, so now we can finally get to this next part. And we're going to create I'm going to use a matrix visual. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to pull in our budget date. And I'm going to put that down the rows. I'll put our budget amount. So we're seeing the different values there. And then our budget category, and that should go across the top. And that all looks good to me, right? But the big thing is what we want is we want to be able to compare sales to budget. So let's go ahead and add that to it. I was worried that this was not changing, but it's changed down here, right? So we're seeing we're getting the different values for sales, our different values for budget, right? And it just all works together. So it's filtering those other tables. What this is actually doing is the values that are in category are being sent across to filter product to get your sales, which is the measure coming from sales, in order to do that correctly. And the same thing, the filtering context from budget date is being sent across to date and filter this fact table.
Can I ask you about that limited relationship?
Uh-huh.
So I guess I understand why it's limited or why it's not this, as rigid or established as a relationship that's entirely within the model. But what is it that we're giving up functionally because it's limited? Like, what can't we do? Or what are we risking?
I think
maybe?
what it's saying is that there's no guarantee it's going to work.
So if your data, it's not checking that your data have like referential integrity and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, okay, gotcha.
Like you're telling it that you know it's a one-to-many, but it can't verify that.
Gotcha. So it's not gonna, it's basically covering its butt in a way, like, hey, man, you, this is on you, you know?
Yes. See if there's anything.
Kevin,
Yes.
do
This
we
is-
have a problem with the category dimension?
Do we have a problem with which dimension?
Category.
The category dimension?
Mhm.
What makes you say that?
Because 500,000 plus 2.3 million plus 9.6 million sales don't add up 43.8 million.
So that's a very good observation, right? But what this context is, that this is also part of why it's limited. Remember, each cell is going to be calculated, and you're the first that noticed this. I don't think I've noticed this in the times that I've given this presentation. What this is doing is, remember, there is no filter context at all when it's calculating this. So this is going to be all of our overall sales fully. Right? So if I just pull onto here sales and make that a card, that's the value that you're seeing. That's very good observation.
Yeah, that is good. Does that mean that there are categories that sales are in? I mean, that must be what it is, right? That are not these three?
Correct.
So,
And we're going
okay,
to see that here in just a second.
okay.
Yep, because this is building this matrix from the viewpoint of these of what we have in budget in our budget data, which is a limited set of categories and dates. And I think, Fernando, I think I have called that out before, is that the totals here could be incorrect, and that or at least I meant to have that in my note. But let's build this out the other way and see what happens. So let's take now, I'm just going to make that smaller. I'm going to start a whole new matrix. And let's start from the sales side. So we're going to put sales on here and we get our 43 million. And we want to break that down by category on the product table. And we want to break that also down by the date that we put within the calendar table, calendar year month. Let me switch that. So it looks like what we have up top, right? So yeah, you can see we have, because we got this scroll, we got a whole lot more categories here. So now what happens when we add our budget to this? We're going to see we get a lot of incorrect numbers, right? It's all the same number over and over and over again. The reason being is the filtering that's happening through this limited relationship is in this direction. Now we're taking values from here and they're not filtering over in this other direction. So one possibility to solve that, and again, this is where you're going to have to start testing, and you could start getting into those performance issues that I was talking about, right? It's not going to happen here because I got a small amount of data, but I'm going to tell it to go ahead and filter in both directions. And I'm going to do that for both of these.
Kevin, the Italians might be watching you.
I know, right?
Kevin, I have another suggestion. If
Okay, hang on, let me try to figure out what's going on here. Oh, I was sorry. I picked the wrong. I want to pick my limited relationship. That's where I was messed up. Went too fast. Okay. So yes, and Fernando, you're 100% right. Is, you know, we discourage people from doing filtering these what's called bidirectional, right? But if your data is small enough and it works, then it works, right? So what you could see here now is the budget only shows up for the dates that we added into this. So this is telling me we don't have the budget data. And then this 43 million that we talked about before, this makes sense because now it's going to add up to all of these same numbers that we have here. So can you do it? Yes. Should you do it? Probably not, but if you have to, and test it and know the risk of what you're getting into. So Fernando, what was the rest of your question?
It's a suggestion.
Okay, let's try it. What do you got?
What about if we create a category dimension from product?
We have a category dimension here.
No, but that was built from budget. If we build the category dimension from product.
Okay, so it has all the values of category. And then you'd have to do the same thing for date. And then put.
Not really.
Well, you have the same problem on both of them, right?
I'm not sure.
So, yeah, let's see if we could, because you're saying. I'm not sure I could build this out fast enough for everything, but if we put this back
I'm
to
sure you
simple,
can.
you have a lot more faith in me than I have in me. If we go into this, table tools.
Why don't you start for category?
I'm sorry?
Why don't you start with the category dimension?
Okay, walk me through the clicks you want me to do. We'll go back here. What would you do next?
Just do query editor and build
Right.
reference.
I have to connect to something. So either, right, I don't have any of this data in like a SQL Server or anything. I only have access to the model.
Okay.
So that's why I was going to do it this way is table tools, new table. I think I could do values, product, category. And this would end up importing this as a table. And then I think what your suggestion is from here is what we would do is we'd probably remove this relationship.
Right.
And then we'd build a relationship to here. This is going to be built as a strong relationship and it's going to default 1-to-1 and go both ways. But we're going to do it, we're going to make it think it's one-to-many, single, even though we know it's 1-to-1, just because that works better. And
Why don't you
then,
just make the relationship budget fact category with the category dimension?
okay, so you're saying eliminate this. I think where you're headed will work as well. I think where I was headed would work as well too, but that's fine. This is cleaner. So you come down to here.
When you said 3 minutes left, Kevin, were they
I know that was
Mexican minutes?
And then you're saying come to here, right?
Uh-huh.
Because of
Well-
the dynamic construction of the thing, right?
Yes,
Yep.
you can hide in product, hide category.
No,
Or maybe
because
you
what it's
don't need it.
no, what it's saying is I'm getting a circular dependency because of the way I built this category dimension.
Right. So if would you go to product and hide category?
I have to relate this to something. But what we could do is if I do copy table and then come
Because
back.
I don't remember well Marco's video on composite models. He was building dimensions, common dimensions.
Okay, so now where'd table 2 go? Okay, that's fine. So we're going to get rid of this. So table 2 takes over as our category dimension. Now we're able to build this one-to-many. And yes, we could come back in and hide this so that nobody uses it. And then now all of our other, so like this one's going to definitely be broken. Yeah, that's why this gets numbers all the way across, because we don't, what's happening, what your key is what's happening on this one. Oh, and on this one, what we want to do is we got to take category off that we had on product. And we got to take category from table 2. Still think we got to do something similar for the dates. Yeah, and that doesn't look like it worked very well.
No, you're
Plus
right.
we're getting blanks and stuff like that. It's an interesting idea. I'll have to play with that one a little bit more and see if building this out correctly, and I think building both of these would actually work a little bit better. But what I showed there, I was able to get to work. But I'll kind of mess with that when I try to make these into maybe build it with all no blank rows. I think even if we did the all no blank rows, we would have had that circular dependency, that the error that was coming up. That was really the problem. And when I did the copying, that's what got rid of that problem.
Mhm.
So,
So we
but
have
I'll
homework.
work on that one, Fernando. That's an interesting challenge. So we're almost all the way up to 7:30. We only got through 4 demos, which is fine. I never expected to get through all of them. So, what you can see is in a couple months, I hope to put out, I'm going to put each one of these demos out as its own video, and then we can talk more about it from there, instead of keeping everybody here all night. Unless y'all just want to stay all night, so.
No.
No, I was just gonna say, Kevin, like the use case that that I just ran into was I don't know if you remember the last monthly meeting where I had that matrix formatting issue, and at the end of it, I had to jump off because a handyman came to the door, and I had just presented this problem with the formatting. And the answer was, and Siri was on, and she said it also is to use calculation groups. But when I finally weeks later got back to it, I had a thin report. I couldn't use the formatting with the, sort of dummy calculation group because Tabular Editor wouldn't connect to the thin report. So I had to make a local model, and that was all that was for, was to just do non-trivial formatting, to use the format specifier or whatever.
So you used a composite model and you put your own calculation
I had to.
group in it?
I had to, because I couldn't. How else is Tabular Editor going to connect to it if I don't make a local model? So that was a very simple.
And did it
win.
work?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
That's the only. Forget it. Let me end on a positive. Yeah, it was great.
And John just said he's interested in using this for a project and intro and some work and to work with it. So good. Well, hopefully it'll help you out. That was the reason of just kind of introducing people to it. Just, go into it with eyes wide open so that, you do know you can run into problems, right? And we just, it was kind of good that exercise Fernando took us down. We saw that circular relationship issue and trying to build that table and things. So kind of get back to my presentation, because one of these things that you're going to want to follow is you could copy, and I'll copy this. I'll put it into the chat. This is a shared set of links that I keep up to date, and everything I find about composite models, I keep putting into that collection. So as I find more things, keep looking back there, and it'll just refresh. You could scan the QR code; it'll get you to the same place. But there's articles, some of the ones that Fernando mentioned from the SQL BI, the Italians. I think Paul Turley, one of his articles out there. I have a couple other videos and things like that. So if you're going to get into it, right, that'll help you get your research going besides what you saw in this demo. All right. I'll give one last round of questions before stopping sharing and stopping the recording. Anything else?
So Kevin, just to be absolutely clear,
Yes.
Mixed and composite are the same thing. And that has nothing to do with hybrid models.
It has nothing to do with hybrid tables. There are hybrid tables, right? But yes, if we look now, our storage mode is mixed, right? Because we have DirectQuery and we have import. So that means some of these tables are one method and some of these tables are others, so it's mixed.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
No problems.
You rock.
Thank you. I hear that from you every Saturday too. Fernando and I talk on Saturdays as well.
Mostly you.
I'm gonna have to cut this out of the recording now. Now I got editing work to do.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then if we wanted to, we still leave time for